This week, we're answering questions on how to know when to stop or keep going. So this is in respect of a horse's tolerance of what you're doing. And how to maintain flow in your horse. If you've ever had a horse that dribbles to a stop, it can be really frustrating. You don't want to have to resort to constantly nagging or upping the ante just to get a response. So stay tuned as we go through Mark Langley's expert advice on how to help both of these training areas. Hello, welcome to Mark Langley's Horsemanship Podcast, a podcast helping people to understand their horses better, to provide solutions in a calm, connected way. I'm Jenny Langley.
And I'm Mark Langley.
Mark, the first question for you comes from Carla from Germany. She's been working with a horse who has significant stress, and she'd like to know, how do you decide whether to push through a problem to avoid the horse feeling perhaps that they've won, or if it's better to release the pressure, take a breath and just reset. In cases where there's repeated sessions over several weeks to reach the same point, requiring backing off each time, when you decide if it's time to push forward rather than continuing to step back, how do you find that right balance between maintaining progress and respecting the horse's need for space? It's a big question. It's a tough one. And I guess it's one that people just don't want to stuff up. Have you got any tips for Carla? Anyone else listening?
Well, it's the one question that, as you just said, Jenny, it's the hardest one to answer because one of the things that people, when they come to clinics, I'll press a horse just a little further in a certain area and get like a shift where the horse makes a big change, and then they get on the other side of the hedge.
This is a mental shift.
A mental shift, yeah. And and I'll say to them, it's okay that you didn't press the horse a bit more in that area, because sometimes done wrong or not looking at it in the right way, you may not get through, and then you left your horse in the stress. So it's most common that people get to a certain, or see their horse get to a certain threshold, and then they go, I need to back out because I don't know if I can actually unscrew this problem. So I'm going to back out so I don't create a bigger problem. And it's completely natural and okay for people to think that, because there are people, if they press and don't get through, then you could create a bigger problem. How do I know? It's a gut feel with me, and it's experience. So that's why it's a very hard question to answer, because I can't say push through or back off without knowing the exact thing that's happening. I tend to sort of have more of a reset function when I work on horses. I don't just keep adding because I want the horse to do something. I try and figure out why it's not doing it and where the biggest red flag is. And then when I'm going to apply pressure and escalate, maybe to get through I call it a hedge, get through the hedge, and I'll explain why I sometimes call it a hedge. To get through the hedge is because I think the horse needs to get through the hedge, but sometimes what the person wants to achieve and where they're getting the friction and where they want to push through is not the right spot in the hedge to push a hole. So basically I'll push a hole in the hedge where the horse has a certain red flag. So the red flag could be the horse doesn't acknowledge a certain pressure, and I might be just picking up the halter lead rope. The person wants the horse to push off to the side and do something. So they're thinking, I've got to get these shoulders off. The horse is just leaning on me. So they'll be thinking, I've got to maybe escalate this pressure to get through. So then the horse makes a change so I can get to the other side. And I'll go and have a look at the horse, and I'll say, yeah, but every time I pick up the knot, the horse's eyes glaze over and it's not searching. So I would actually just pick up the knot and get the horse, and I'd put the pressure there and say, hey, listen to the feel, and then I'd leave it alone. So then I would maybe escalate the pressure in a certain way, but then the horse would go blink, blink. I'm tuned into that knot now. I'm searching and I'm available. Then I'd say, now can you shift the shoulders over, and the horse will do it. Okay. So this is why I can't answer this question, because I don't want to encourage someone to escalate in the wrong part of the hedge. I don't want to. And so sometimes if you feel you're not making progress in the sense that you've done the thing 15 times and you feel you get to a point that you're not getting over it, so you've got to back off, then something's wrong and you have to maybe get over that hill. But are you on the right hill or not? That's the biggest thing, and that's the thing I can't answer without being right there beside you looking at what's happening. And yes, there are times if you think you have to back out all the time, then you have to press an area because the horse is obviously in the wrong mindset and it's not making a change, and the pressure is going to keep causing a negative mindset, and then release will always be the thing that the horse is going, oh, cool, good, they backed out, release, excellent. That's the thing that makes me feel better. So there are times you have to push through, knowing when. I'd be foolish to answer it on a podcast because I'd hate to tell you something that was not quite right.
Carla, you'll have to get Mark over to Germany. You'll have to organise him over there.
Yeah, well, it is a tough one.
Just you being able to say this is, that example that you gave is so insightful in itself, though, and helpful in the to sort of pinpoint areas that you may have to look at. You're wanting. Sorry, Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I'll just explain the hedge story, why I'm starting to call it a hedge. Years ago when I first did my little backpacking thing in England, I was only just in my early 20s, and I stayed with a friend down in the south of England, and I got some work fixing all their fences. And I tell you what, give me an Australian fence any day, no matter how broken it is. Because in England, they've got this fascination with hedges. So the idea is you build a fence and then you grow a hedge on it. And the hedges are great because sometimes in all that countryside, there's the only place for the birds to live are in the hedges. So it's nice to have hedges along all the fences for the animals to live in. But the hardest thing is when the hedge is not quite working properly. So a working hedge doesn't have a hole in it. So then when you've got to fix a fence inside the hedge, you've got to crawl through this hedge and cut stuff out and fix wires, and it's just a nightmare. So it's like eventually the idea is the hedge takes the part of the fence, but unfortunately some of these sheep were finding holes in hedges and then holes in fences, and then so fixing fences in the middle of hedges was a really, that's a pain of a job. But anyway, if you were I sometimes say a hedge is a brace, and it's the pressure that you don't know if you can get through or not. And that first time you push into that hedge, there's blackberries and there's all sorts of things trying to fight. But on the other side of the hedge, there's really nice green grass. And that green grass is the mindset of stability, softness, and the horse feeling good and in an emotional, stable state. On the other side of the hedge is the no grass left. The horse is in kind of a paddock that it's always a bit stressed, and it's kind of in that kind of, I'm not really comfortable. But it's a big hedge to get through. Every time you go a bit into the hedge and you're pressing with pressure and something's happening, then the blackberries get too much, and then you back out, and you still back out in the negative mindset. And that, though there's no pressure around, you're still on the wrong side of the hedge, which is the wrong side of the brace. So Carla's question, I guess, is referring to this hedge. I'm pushing in to this hedge. It's getting more blackberries. The horse is getting more cut and stressed to getting through this hedge. Should I back out or should I not? And I guess there's a point in life where we have to actually push through the hedge to get to the other side. And the hedge is a tough place to push through. Now, once you've pushed a hole in a hedge, interestingly enough, you create a pathway through the hedge. Now, sometimes that horse can walk through the pathway into the green grass or back into the brace no grass place. Okay, and it's not a brace place; it's just a place that the horse is not always emotionally happy and stable. So the horse can go between the green and the not green through the hedge as that pathway opens up. But what ends up happening is when a horse gets through the hedge, you can actually push through that hole quicker next time and quicker again the next time because the hole gets bigger, like when a wombat makes a hole in the fence. And then eventually the horse goes, well, I don't really want to be back there. I'd rather be on the green side. And then what happens? The horse stays on the green side long enough that the hedge grows over and it doesn't fall back into that bad place anymore. It stays in the good place. So the door behind it closes into a bad mindset, and it stays in a good mindset. When you first put the hole in the hedge, you access the new mindset, and it gets easy to get to. Doesn't mean the horse doesn't fall back, but eventually they won't, because the hedge grows over. That's the story of the hedge. Anyway, hope that makes sense, Carla, and it might help you think about it.
It does. It's really interesting. Can I just ask you though, that when, what this special thing that you do where you're changing a horse's mindset, you're pushing them through a particular mindset to come out on the other end. So what you're effectively doing, can I just clarify this? You're transitioning them from a negative to a positive mindset. Is that right? So that they actually feel okay.
Yep.
What happens when you see that transition? How do you know you've done it?
You've done it. So there's two terms I use, a change and a shift. Okay, so a change is, I picked up the rope and my horse backed up a step, and before it didn't back up a step, it used to lean. That's a change. The horse made a little change, but the horse backed up, but it's still kind of backed up, but it's not, great. A shift is when a horse shifts, everything shifts, and the backup is like loose and soft, and the horse is really kind of thinking and involved in it, and everything's soft. And then every time you pick up on that rope, the horse doesn't go back to the brace. So the horse makes little changes, and then when they make a shift, it's a real change. That's like the lasting change that sort of sinks into their brain and their body. So you have to sometimes get a shift through small changes. Sometimes small changes never quite get a shift, and that's like the head story. But what I'm looking for in a horse is I'm looking for the expression, the proprioception, the awareness, the whole body to change. So what happens is the eyes soften. They position differently. They come out. So some horses are sunken in their eyes. They're sunken in a bit. They've got a hard expression, tight muzzle, shallow breathing, all those things. Ears are sort of set in a certain rigid position. Their bodies kind of carry tension, their movement. They don't pick up in the knees when they back up. They everything's a bit kind of, stiff and not quite right. And they're not in that soft aware mindset. When you've got them through, what happens is everything opens up. Their eyes start to blink, and then they start to look around. They breathe again. They draw air, the smell of the air, not necessarily they're breathing to save their life. They're just drawing the smells. The smells come back, and then they start to, their body loosens, their muscles loosen. And then when you ask for backup or ask for something simple, they pick up their feet better. They're not carrying the same tension in the movements and all that. And as I say, you see a ripply loose muscle effect in the horse where their muscles are all loose, not kind of tight and tense. So a whole bunch of things happens to the body when the mind makes a big shift. And And the reason why some people think I'm crazy when I'm talking about horror movies, I said, you like horror movies? Well, I don't really watch many horror movies, but I know every person I've seen in a horror movie looks like they're standing in a cupboard, shallow breathing with tension all through their body. And I see so many horses that are standing in the same cupboard and, looking at a murderer walking through their house just through a crack in the cupboard, standing there, not breathing in a state of freeze. And it's terrible to think that so many horses are in a horror movie every single day when they're around people in education and the human world. So, but if you can shift them out of that state of tension, then that's the mindset that you want them in to live in the life around us. And yeah, it's quite fascinating seeing the changes and also very can be emotional because you know that horse might have been 10 years without knowing what that feels like. And then when they do get into that state, it's like a wonderful thing to watch.
Wow. So it's really addressing your horse's emotions as opposed to, what they're physically showing you. Look at that emotion. Yep. That might be an indicator for Carla on where to work on. Can I ask you hypothetically really quickly, if it's a short answer, I'm going to slip it in. I know you were talking about sort of changing a mindset and you have to get them through that hedge, but is it hypothetically possible that if you were to go back to your foundation and go back to absolutely everything from the beginning and create a mindset right from the first step, first contact, and you maintain a mindset of one that is trusting and calm and present and, effectively what you want that horse's mindset to be. And so every step of your training as you progress stays in that good mindset. Isn't it possible to
Well,
build the horse up on blocks like that? So
and
you don't ever have to
that's why
push them over the
that's
limit.
no, well, that's why we breed and educate and start horses in a way that keeps the horse in the horse, like those old horse, Tom Dorrance and those guys were saying, keep the horse in the horse. That's what they were. I believe that's what they were talking about. Keep the horse in the horse. Don't turn them into a sort of a frozen robot or whatever. So when you get a young horse, it's grown up in the right herd with the right dynamics of stress and sanctuary, stress and sanctuary. So every herd has stress and sanctuary. Sanctuary is like if you look at zebras, the stress of the lion, the sanctuary of actually escaping it and finding some safe place somewhere else is how the horses have evolved to operate. And every prey animal has learnt to operate dealing with stress. The horses that don't cope are the ones that don't have sanctuary. So people think, oh, you can't stress a horse because or you can't take it past its threshold. And I'm like, well, they're designed in the wild back in the state of proper, when they were hunted and stuff, to go into a state of stress. But the thing that keeps them being able to do that through their whole life is the safety and the sanctuary and making a decision that causes a safety for them and a good feeling. And that's what people are not really sort of offering their horses is that sanctuary of good feeling. Now, if the horse is in a sanctuary of good feeling with just enough awareness to keep it bright and its mind mobile and not dulling. So some horses are in their sanctuary for so long with no concern about anything that they actually get really dull. And then when you want to work them, they're really dull because there is no stimulant. There's nothing to kind of cause them to sort of, oh, what was that? I've got to do something about that. Oh, that horse just nipped at me. I better go over there. They become super dull, and they're the ones that, even just giving them sanctuary and no education can put them in a bad mindset because there's not enough stimulant to keep that sort of up and down thing happening in the horse. So a healthy mindset is kept in the horse through the right level of caution and curiosity through their whole life. And that's in the herd when they're brought up, when you train, and then you never end up in that mindset where the horse feels helpless because you've always had an option through good education to stay, that sanctuary and good feeling is always available no matter the little stresses that they go through. So then they get to a ripe old age as a healthy-minded horse. It's never gone into a long negative mindset. But what happens to horses that I see, the ones that have been in a really bad place, it'd be nice to just take them back and start at the start again and take them all the way through. But memory's memory, and memory is a trigger. And that trigger of memory, even though you're doing really well, suddenly arises accidentally in your training and the horse just goes kaplunk. That's what I do when that happens because that's what I've done for 10 years. So I think the horses that have like the ex-race horses, the horses have been under a lot of trauma and have learnt those coping mechanisms. And these horses, we're talking horses that learn these coping mechanisms before they're a year old. Like I've seen horses that are crib biters that are not even 12 months old and they're already chewing rails down. So these are like humans that have grown up with complete instability and chaos or whatever that they once their mind changes, it's very hard to shift back. And I mean, if psychologists could just go around and press a button on a person and say, erase your past, it'd be wonderful, but you can't erase the past. So I've found ways that you can actually rejig the horse's mind when those traumatic experiences or memories happen, but it takes a very special button. And once you press that button, there's almost a way out of that problem for them. And then once you can press that button and they find the way through that hedge, then you can almost go back and re-educate them as a young horse would from the start all the way through and show them all the things that they didn't understand or they missed along the way. But I think with those really chronic horses, if you just went the soft, easy, let's just kind of go right back to the start, there's a lot of risk of they just get in a horse float and then the trigger happens and then they're back in that mindset and they shift into it and then they shift out of it again. So I think you have to sometimes put the pressure on to find the way out of it because the pressure has put them into that place.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. Right, from theory to practical, something perhaps a little bit easier for people to grasp. This one's from Adele from the UK. And Adele is struggling with getting her horse to be consistently flowing, both under saddle and on a lead. So she's riding a horse. She's finding that he'll walk a few steps and then he'll stop without her asking anything. And each time he stops, she picks up one rein, she turns, and he starts walking again. But she's also noticed that in the leading, she's struggling to get him to trotting up on the lead rope. He'll speed up a little bit when she's leading, but it will only trot if she runs. And also there's sort of lunging energy transitions that she's finding it a little bit hard to do as well. So she's just wondering, how does she sort of get a better reaction from him without him leaning into the rope? You know, if you give a bump on the rope and they don't respond, do you hold the same pressure? Do you bump again? He's not a horse that responds very well to the flag. And she does comment on a video that you've got online, which was helping lunging energy transitions. The owner apparently took over. The mare didn't speed up. There was circles were happening very tightly around her, and you told the owner not to walk backwards. And then you walked in, and she noticed that the horse responded completely differently. The horse didn't push on you, but she is wondering, what on earth did you do that the owner wasn't doing, because she hasn't been able to pick up on it. Don't know if that means anything to you. If you can shed some light on that, but also just if you can just answer how she can sort of help with getting a bit of flow better.
Yeah. So by the sounds of your one range starts, they're making some marginal gain in gaining flow. Now, just on that subject, one range start that you're doing under saddle to get flow, you will start to get flow, and all you do in a one range start when you're riding is you just operate as a parking officer. So as soon as all 4 feet go to park, you just pick up a turn and say, don't park there, and keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it until the horse stops thinking that parking is available. And when parking becomes unavailable in the horse's mind and it chooses that parking is not available, then they say, well, if I can't park, I'm going to start to search. And that's when they search and they get a forward thought and they start to travel. A lady that just had a particular horse at the last clinic and in the masterclass had a standard bred that she did 3 months of one range starts. 3 months. Now just think about that, everybody, because she committed to this one lesson for 3 months. Okay. Why did she commit to that lesson? Is because her horse was stiff, didn't want to move forward, and then sometimes would bolt. So to her, safety in her life was at risk because this horse would snatch and bolt. So for her, a one range start for 3 months was worth it. Some people that have a quiet horse that won't move and won't shift their thoughts, because their life's not at risk, they're frustrated within a couple of hours or a couple of lessons of doing one range starts, and the horse is still a bit stiff and dull. But as I say, her life was on the line, so she thought, I've tried everything else. I'm going to continue with this because I think there's worth in it. Now, she did get me to do a video review, and I just sort of told her how to do the one range starts a bit more effectively and got a bit more, desire in the rein to do it, and that helped. But now she's got a horse that hasn't bolted in ages, and it can be ridden and ride around and stuff like that, and hasn't snatched since that 3 months of sticking to that one range start.
Wow.
And I'm not saying that's the savior, but I am saying that people will usually get frustrated with lack of impulsion within minutes, not hours. And those horses that have been pushed and whatever and they've gone through everything, well, they can build a wall bigger than the Great Wall of China sometimes. So you got to think that, commitment to something until you master that one thing, and following a rein is one of the most productive things that you can have a horse understand, because it's the one that gets you out of trouble all the time, so committing to pulling a rein until the horse kind of comfortably follows it and creates a soft mobility and awareness of that rein is essential before you go fast. Because if you go fast without that, how are you going to steer your horse? How are you going to bring it back through the reins? So you're doing the right thing by the one range starts. but you have to keep doing it until your horse gets full mobility. And what I'm talking about is you can pick up the hind quarter, you can lead the forequarter, the horse, and you get this feeling of just perpetual motion in the rein, and the horse is very comfortable with it. Don't do a one rein start because you want the horse to find a straight line and walk forward, and you're getting frustrated because the horse is not finding that. Just work on the mobility and the balance in the turn, and just think about that. Don't think about going places. And then when the horse gets looser and softer and kind of comfortable in those turns, it's getting better balanced, and then you'll find natural impulsion and desire starting to sort of build up in your horse and interest. And then when you feel that happening, well, you just let that horse out and he'll probably walk along and go fine. You're trying to teach the horse not to shut out to the reins. Once the horse is not shutting out to the reins, then you've got a chance of using your legs to go faster. But you've got to get one of those tools to work first. And the steering wheel is probably a very powerful tool to get your horse, because if you kick, and the horse gets going with energy, you're still going to have a brace when you pull on the rein. So energy with big brace in the reins is not really a sensible option. So that's why the one rein start and committing for longer until you get, as I say, be a parking officer. And every time the horse parks, you say, don't park there. And eventually you'll get what I call that perpetual motion, and the horse is just going all the time softly. And then when you want to stop them, you just back them up and loosen the rein and let them stand. So once you've got that, you'll feel a big difference in the desire to go forward. But going back to the leading, your horse is stiff in the leading and there's a block. So the horse can walk, and then you get to a certain point that it just leans and blocks out the leading pressure, which means if the horse is not leading very softly, you're working a one rein start under saddle on a horse that actually is quite dull and heavy and doesn't have a lot of desire in the rein and the rope. So you have to clean up that leading, which means maybe the horse is blocking out the leading, which means a bump mightn't be enough. You might have to go like two hands and give it a bit of a pull bump to say, and then loosen off and let it go blink, blink, what was that? And then wait a little bit and say, ask again. Watch the horse's expression and how much it's blocking out the pressure. Maybe that's what's happening. It's just blocking out the pressure. And maybe you have to put a little bit more of a clearer pressure in there, get it to search a bit, and then take that pressure away and ask again until the horse starts to process the pressure in a different way, not just automatically go lock it down. You say the horse is dull to the flag. Maybe there's a way you can move the flag around it and create a little pop so it gets more aware. And if that awareness can push that horse back into the pressure, then the horse has searched into the pressure and then it's come forward off the pressure. The common thing that people teach is just, pull on the head and then just bump the horse down the ribs to come off head pressure. Now, that's all good and well, and it does get a horse to trot forward in pressure. And there are some times that I will go to that level for some horses, but I don't tell everyone to do it because they just do it. And then all of a sudden the horse just thinks leading pressure is a cue because something's going to push them up from behind. So they actually don't really think through the field properly, and it won't help you one rein starts under saddle. So you might have to just be a bit experimental and observe your horse by increasing the pressure, maybe adding a couple of heavy, like sort of slightly bigger bumps to see if the horse actually goes, oh, I've got to do something. That's a bit uncomfortable. I might have to try and search. Because once they've blocked the pressure out, they will keep blocking it out. So I won't say exactly what to do. I want you to be more observant and just practice. Even when you use the flag, maybe, do it when the horse didn't expect it really quickly. And see what happens, see if the horse gets a bit concerned about it and suddenly they start to be aware of it. And all you got to do is bring that awareness back in your horse, and that backing and forward should be silky smooth and mobile and soft. And then once that's working, the one rein starts will work better, and then you'll find when you go back to leg aid, the horse will be a lot better.
Super. I hope that helps, Adele. And thank you, Carla, for your question. That was simulated a fantastic response from Mark. It was sort of real insights into some of the technical things that he's doing with creating mind shifts in horses. My goodness, aren't we lucky to have you, Mark, over here in Australia? But you are off to the States next year, so they get to have you there as well. So and then everyone who's a member online gets to have your help through these questions and the video reviews. So it's great what you do. And thanks from all of us. Thanks to all our listeners. And we'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, Jenny. Thanks, everybody.
If you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to like it, share it, or leave us a comment. It all helps in reaching new ears and helping more horses. Learn more of Mark Langley's unique insights and how you can positively affect your horse's training ability and mental welfare. For just the price of a couple of coffees, you can access his online horsemanship training videos. Head to marklangley.com.au.